The Kurakhov pocket has snapped shut. 12,000 elite soldiers are surrounded. Good afternoon, dear friends. We are still with you in the same daily format, analyzing the situation on the front lines. Before we begin, I would like to sincerely ask you to subscribe to the channel. Your subscription helps the channel grow. Thank you to everyone who has already subscribed. You know, everything is buzzing right now because new messages and details are constantly emerging about the conversation between Putin and Trump, as well as the details of future negotiations. It's interesting to watch the headlines in European media. There's outright hysteria about Putin and Trump already being friends, about Europe not being invited to the negotiating table, about Zelensky's opinion not being taken into account, and about the opinions of Europeans being ignored. It seems like everything will be decided between two people, Putin and Trump. That's it. And everyone is in a state of panic and hysteria. But let's move on to analyzing the situation on the front lines. Let's open the map together. Yesterday, we discussed the situation in the Kursk region. Now let's move to the main front and discuss what's happening there. A lot of interesting things are happening, and you know what's particularly interesting is that a direction that had been completely stagnant has suddenly come to life. The front there had been static, unmoving. But we'll talk about that. Let's start from the north and gradually move south. As for the Volchansk direction, the front is practically static here as well. Yes, there are moments of activity, like recently, for example, when Russian troops crossed the Vovchaya River and landed on the opposite bank, managing to occupy the tree lines. By the way, the Ukrainian armed forces still haven't been able to dislodge them from there. They haven't been able to clear those tree lines, and these lines, though they're not just lines, they're actual forests, so this section of the forest remains under the control of the Russian army. In Volchansk itself, there's no advancement, and there really can't be. The city is gone. It's a lunar landscape. I've already shown footage of what Volchansk looks like now. There's nothing to hold on to there. So neither the UAF nor the Russian army has made any progress there. If we move slightly east, Russian troops have taken control of the village of Tikhoye. However, they haven't been able to advance to the next settlement, which would be Volchansky Khutora. But overall, as I said at the beginning, the front here is more or less static. There's no movement from either the Ukrainian or the Russian side. Let's move further, the bridgehead on the right bank of the Oskol River. Here, unlike the Volchansk direction, the front is dynamic, constantly in motion, and it's one-sided. That is, Russian troops are advancing, and the Ukrainian armed forces haven't been able to stop their movement. Although, by the way, they've deployed the 3rd Separate Assault Brigade here, which I reported on immediately, and my subscribers were aware of this. So the 3rd Separate Assault Brigade was deployed, but even that isn't enough to eliminate this entire bridgehead on the right bank of the Oskol River, as the total area of the bridgehead already exceeds 70 square kilometers. And given the dynamics of the Russian army's movement, it will soon reach 100 square kilometers. At that point, it won't just be a bridgehead, it will be a full-fledged section of the front. What's the specific situation? Look, at the moment, Russian troops are focused on advancing toward 4 villages, with the goal of merging them into one line. The movement is from Figolevka to Petro-Ivanovka. There's progress here, as the Russian army has managed to advance 800 meters from the village, and only 500 meters remain to the southern outskirts of Petro-Ivanovka. At the same time, there's also movement from Figolevka along the heights toward Dolgenki. Again, Russian troops have taken the heights and are advancing toward the village. The advance here has been over a kilometer. Plus, there's Kutkovka, but there hasn't been much progress there yet. And there's Doroshevka. Here, the Russian army is on the outskirts of the village. The overall goal of this operation, and it is an operation, a chain of operations, is to connect everything into one line. Look at this. Once that happens, the bridgehead will become stable, and it will be possible to build safe crossings. And as I said, it will no longer be just a bridgehead. It will be a full-fledged separate section of the front. All right, let's move on. There's a very interesting section ahead. Unexpected. Absolutely unexpected, I would say. As I mentioned, interesting developments have occurred in an area where there's been almost no news. This is the Seversk direction, specifically the area around the village of Belogorovka. This village has been contested since 2022. The UAF's defense here was monolithic. The key word here is was. Now, with reserves running low, the front has unexpectedly cracked here as well. In particular, even the Ukrainian analytical resource Deep State has already removed UAF control over this village and marked it as a grey zone. And the American map has gone even further, as you can see, indicating that the center of the village and the approach to the western outskirts are now fully under Russian control. All day yesterday, reports were coming in from various sources, both Russian and Ukrainian, indicating that the Ukrainian armed forces were abandoning their positions in Belogorovka due to the inability to withstand the pressure and assaults from Russian assault units. This news was confirmed not only by statements from the Ukrainian side and updates on the Deep State map, but also by video footage. I posted a video on my channel, footage from the Ukrainian side. It shows 2 Russian soldiers, one wounded and the other approaching him. They were preparing to evacuate, but didn't make it in time. The video is quite grim because a drone drops an explosive, causing an explosion that kills the soldiers. However, these frames confirm that Russian troops are not only present on the eastern outskirts, but also in the center and western outskirts of Belogorovka. This is an important piece of news, and I'll explain why. Belogorovka is part of the Luhansk region, while Grigorovka is in the Donetsk region. Therefore, if Russian troops take control of Belogorovka, it's one of the final steps towards securing 100% of the Luhansk region. That's the first point. Second, capturing Belogorovka will allow Russian forces to advance further toward Grigorovka, Serebryanka, and Dronovka. This, in turn, will enable them to bypass Seversk from the north, putting the UAF garrison in the city at risk of operational encirclement. This would place all Western logistics, look here, these roads supply the UAF garrison in Seversk, under fire control. Third, this is an important psychological moment. I'll remind you that it was in this area, between Dronovka and Belogorovka, after the Russian army took Kremenna, that one of the most disastrous operations of 2022 took place, the crossing of the Siversky Donets River. Those who remember will recall, and for those who don't, I'll briefly explain. The operation took place in May, with the goal of encircling the UAF grouping in Lysychansk and Sievierodonetsk. These cities were still under Ukrainian control at the time. There were 4 attempts to cross the river, all of which ended in failure. Russian troops suffered some of their heaviest losses in a single operation during that time. Around 80 units of armored vehicles, including tanks, were destroyed, and over 400 soldiers were killed. Now, as the UAF unexpectedly begin to falter in this area, it opens up an opportunity for the Russian army to avenge that failed operation. Additionally, it's important to understand that the activation in the Seversk direction isn't limited to Belogorovka, but also extends further south, near Verkhnekamensky. The maps here vary. For example, this American map shows the village under full Russian control, while other maps indicate that Russian troops only control the eastern part. However, with the Russian advance to the north, it's clear that there will also be an advance here, as these are links in the same chain. And here, as you can see, after Verkhnekamensky, there's a direct road to the eastern outskirts of Seversk. The distance here is actually quite short, just over 4 kilometers. Now let's move a bit further north to the area near the city of Lyman. Things are quiet on the right bank, where the Russian army holds a bridgehead covering 26 square kilometers. But there's no rapid advancement here, unlike on the right bank of the Oskol River. However, there's noticeable activity on the left bank. Russian troops have entered Yampolovka, and the UAF have already been pushed out of the northern part of the village. Additionally, the area to the east has been cleared. If the Ukrainian armed forces can't hold Yampolovka, and they won't be able to, they'll have to retreat toward Torsky. And here, as you can see, Russian troops are already on the outskirts of the village. In short, it's a trap for the Ukrainian armed forces, a no-win situation. No matter what they do, they end up losing. Kursk direction as of February 14th, Sverdlikovo. According to available information, Sverdlikovo is under the control of the Russian armed forces. Clearing operations are currently underway, and official confirmation is expected soon. In the area of Cherkasskaya Konopelka, the situation remains largely unchanged. UAF units continue to hold positions in several basements. access to which is difficult due to active drone use. At the same time, fighting continues for control of the tree lines north of Cherkasskaya Konopelka, which the UAF occupied on February 6. In the area of Cherkasskoye Porechnoye, positional battles continue with varying intensity. Mirnohrad-Toretsk direction as of February 14. Tarasovka, Zeleny Pole. Russian armed forces units continue offensive operations toward Tarasovka and Malinivka. On the Tarasovka section of the front, after gaining control of Vodian Druhe, which opened the possibility of advancing to the southwestern outskirts of Tarasovka through the ravine, Russian forces completed the clearing of Zeleny Pole. This settlement is effectively adjacent to the southeastern outskirts of Tarasovka. Thus, the preparatory actions for a possible assault on Tarasovka have been completed. Simultaneously, efforts are being made to consolidate positions in the eastern part of Malinivka. Pokrovsk direction as of February 14. Fighting continues. Yesterday, the main offensive actions in this direction were carried out by units of the Russian armed forces. The Ukrainian armed forces continue attempts to penetrate the Pashani area, but with the arrival of Russian reserves, these attempts have not yielded significant results. Additionally, UAF attempts to break through Dachanskoye have ceased. At the same time, heavy fighting continues for Udakhnoye. Despite the complexity of the situation, the advantage currently lies with the Russian forces. A turning point in favor of the Russian armed forces is expected here in the near future. Novopavlovsk direction as of February 14, clearing of Andreevka. Even Ukrainian sources reported serious problems for the UAF in the areas of Andreevka, Konstantinovka and Ulakli by yesterday evening. These assessments are not unfounded. Firstly, units of the Russian armed forces have occupied part of the defensive strongholds north of Andreevka. Secondly, the front line has shifted to the southern outskirts of Ulakli and Konstantinovka. A breakthrough by Russian forces in this area could lead to the encirclement of the enemy grouping, which is already in a semi-encirclement. The situation remains extremely tense. Moreover, the UAF command has expressed concern over the actions of Russian troops in the Bogatyr direction, as well as their successes in the Zaporizhzhia area. This indicates that the problems faced by UAF units near the Volchanka River are far from over. Bolshe-Novosilovskoye direction, as of February 14, Russian armed forces advance northward. Yesterday brought further advances in this direction. For the fourth consecutive day, units of the Vostok grouping have successfully breached UAF defenses west of the Mokry Yali River. This development is causing serious concern, especially given that the area is saturated with fortified strongholds. Such progress is likely putting significant pressure on the UAF command in Kiev, as well as on General Nayev, who was transferred to this section of the front after making critical remarks about Zelensky. Nayev arrived here just after the Russian offensive began. So far, he has been unable to effectively counter the advance of Russian units. They continue to methodically overcome UAF defenses north of Vremevka and push northward. Well, that's all from me for now. I wish you a productive day, and I'll see you soon.